For the 2023 season, Chessington World of Adventures debuted a brand new B&M roller coaster called Mandrill Mayhem. It is part of the largest single investment the park has ever made with the World of Jumanji. It's located all the way in the back of the park, and this wing coaster wraps around the entire land. And this ride gained a lot of attention when it was first announced because of how strange of a roller coaster it is. You're looking at a B&M family wing shuttle multi-launch coaster. As Sarah so accurately described it, it's like they were just pulling things out of a hat, and that's how they came up with this ride. It is easily the most unique B&M coaster we've ever seen built, and in today's review, I'm going to be talking about the ride experience, let you know what you can expect when you go out to experience this thing. So first things first, Mandrill Mayhem is the 5th roller coaster here at Chessington. The last one added was almost 20 years ago, which was Dragon's Fury in 2004. So this ride was long overdue. And if you're familiar with Chessington, you probably know that they're owned by Merlin, same company that operates Thorpe Park, Haida Park, and they've installed several other wing coasters at their parks such as Flugder Demonen, Raptor, Gardaland, The Swarm, Thorpe Park. So clearly they're big fans of this ride type, and they said, let's make one the marquee attraction in this new themed area. And I'll say right away, it is very cool looking. When you enter this land, you're greeted with the entrance sign for the World of Jumanji, and then the ride's single inversion and inline twist, and the train passing directly over your heads. And then when you look straight ahead, you'll see the big double helix and that jaguar statue. There's a lot of really great photo moments. And I know there's a review of just the roller coaster, but I will say the land is pretty well done. It's definitely small, but I feel like they did a lot with it. Mandrill Mayhem is one of 3 rides in this land. The other 2 are tamer flat rides. The entrance to Mandrill Mayhem is towards the back near the big jaguar statue. It's not a super impressive ride entrance, it's actually pretty low key, but it's fine because again, they make that bold statement when you enter the land itself. At first you have a pretty narrow queue, lots of tight switchbacks. There's some fun little details and references to the films here. One of my favorites is actually a callback to the original Jumanji film with Robin Williams. It's a reference to his character's name, Alan Parrish, who was the original person to go into Jumanji. Really fun Easter egg because most of the land is actually based off of the newer films, but as someone who grew up with the original, I really like that they had that. Now before you enter the station, it's actually pretty interesting what they do here. They'll hold the entire train just until you're ready to board. So the previous train will be unloading and then they'll send you in. So you only get to see the station for a brief period of time before you're immediately going through the entrance gates, taking your seat. I don't know if that's because they don't want the station to get very cluttered, or they don't want people in the station because the train's going forwards and backwards. Maybe they want it to be more of a reveal, but regardless, I thought that was a pretty interesting procedure. The station itself is actually pretty lively. I think it's got some fun decor around it, which is good because the outside of it isn't too impressive. My favorite detail is all the way in the back towards the roof. You can see some handprints, like when the train launches backwards and everyone's hands were in the air, just made imprints. It reminds me of what you have at Thunderbird at Holiday World. And actually, I'm going to come back to Holiday World in a minute because something else reminded me of that ride. Before this wing coaster train, you're looking at 7 rows, total of 28 riders per train. It is just the one train, which is definitely not ideal for a park that can get pretty busy. It's actually the reason that this ride is on virtual queue a lot of the times. Because of the time that it takes to load the one train, send it around the layout, and come back, this will be one of the longer lines that you'll probably have to wait in at the park. So just be prepared for that, especially if you're wanting to experience the backwards row. Yes, there's one row on Mandrill Mayhem that faces the other direction, the very last row. From my experience at Chessington, they did allow us to wait for that specific row, but if it gets really busy, I mean, I could totally see it being up to the grouper's discretion. After I walk you through the ride experience, I'll talk about which variation I preferred. But Mandrill Mayhem, being the weird ride that it is, starts things off with a backwards launch. And it's a pretty tame one too. You accelerate backwards out of the station, do a slight little dip downwards, and enter a scorpion tail, a junior scorpion tail if I might add. It's one of the 2 spikes on this layout. Depending on where you're sitting, it can be pretty underwhelming. The closer you are to the front of the train, the less you actually feel. Like for my first ride, I sat in the front row and we barely went up the scorpion tail at all. It felt completely pointless. But later, when we rode towards the back of the train, it was actually pretty fun. So if anything, that proves that you should ride this more than once. It will definitely affect your ride experience. But for my first ride, starting off with that maneuver, it wasn't a great first impression. But after that maneuver, you head back towards the station, accelerate into what is technically launch 2, you bank left out of the station and enter your inline twist. And you know, I mentioned Thunderbird earlier. This inversion reminds me a lot of Thunderbird's final roll. Neither moment is taken at a particularly fast speed, and it kind of leads to some fun hang time. You're just like slowly twisting around it. The max speed we're looking at here is 45 miles per hour. So this absolutely is meant to be a family coaster. It's located at a family park, so I totally get it. Once you exit that inversion, you'll go through a couple little twists, and that's when you hit your launch 3. So you're going to speed up partway through the ride so you can make it through this double helix. At first it seems like no big deal because, oh yeah, we have that all the time with Intamin rides and Vekomas. Tons of multi-launch coasters out there. Well, this is the first time we've gotten that on a B&M, so having a little boost there was neat to see. So you start rising up through this double helix, and this is just a really weird sensation. It slows down quite a bit there towards the end, and you really just stall out. And you're just like chilling on the side. Like, it's unique and definitely odd, because on one hand, you don't make it up super high, but I don't know if it's something that I really enjoyed. I was just like, oh, okay, now we're here, and then we start going backwards. You slowly start heading back down the other direction, go through that final launch, that same little boost that we had. Some of the little twists that you have there between that acceleration and the inversion actually catch you off guard when you're going backwards. So that part was actually kind of neat. And then if you thought you took that roll slowly before, now you really do. I swear that thing goes on for like ever. And then you turn back into the station, and that's your ride. It's bizarre, that's for sure. I don't know if I really liked it. Like, I can appreciate it for how different it is, but it wasn't something that I got off and I was like, wow, I have to go do that again. Maybe I would have liked it more if it was smooth. I know, it's a B&M coaster. It should be smooth, right? You would think, but for being a brand new 2023 roller coaster, this thing feels particularly bouncy. Like, I know that a lot of wing coasters have moments like that, but this one really felt that way. The outside seats, especially when you're further away from that center of the vehicle, it can be really unpleasant during some moments because your seat is moving vertically so much when it really shouldn't. So if I had to give a recommendation, definitely sit on the inside seats. They're way more comfortable. I think overall, I did prefer sitting towards the back of the train. I actually enjoyed my backwards facing ride more. When you're facing the other direction, that first launch really feels meaningful because then you're like staring up at the sky, like almost upside down. You go through the layout backwards first, so you don't see anything coming. Everything's a surprise. And then you go through forwards at the very end. So I'm sure everyone's going to have their own personal preferences, but that was the seat that I enjoyed most. I also can really appreciate that it was not an upcharge. There are several roller coasters out there that have backwards facing seats that charge for them, but here on Mandrill Mayhem, nah, if you want to ride in the backwards seat, you go for it. So let's talk about a final score. And this is actually a tough one because usually I compare roller coasters with other rides of that similar class. So I feel like I have to compare Mandrill Mayhem to other family coasters and not other wing coasters, which feels the opposite of what you should do. Normally, I'd compare a wing coaster to a wing coaster, but this is the only family wing coaster I've ever done. The only other one out there is at Legoland, Germany. But the thing is, even in the world of family coasters, I didn't feel like Mandrill Mayhem was all that great. I think that it certainly has some nice aspects to it. It's a pretty ride. The theming around it is fun. The trains look great. And the fact that it has a backwards row is awesome. But the layout just really didn't do anything for me. And I kind of feel bad for saying that because I got all excited that B&M was finally trying something different. I liked that we were getting something outside of the norm. And then I rode it and I was like, huh, that wasn't really what I was hoping for. And it's not that it wasn't thrilling enough. I knew full well to expect a family coaster. I really just think that the individual moments left a lot to be desired. I got off the ride and I just wasn't really satisfied. It's short and underwhelming, to be honest. So I think for its score, I'm going to go with a 5.5 out of 10. I think it does some things right, which I mentioned in this review, but as a ride experience, there's just not a whole lot to it. Nothing about it is going to wow you. And that's not even just me coming to it from an angle of a coaster enthusiast. I talked to some people afterwards who haven't ridden very many roller coasters at all that felt similar things. I know there are going to be people that really enjoy the roller coaster, and to that, I say great. Of course, I'm really glad that you liked it. But I think personally, it just wasn't for me. My favorite ride in the park ended up being Dragon's Fury. I actually thought that thing was a lot of fun. But, you know, that's just my opinion. I'd love to hear from you guys down in the comments below if you've ridden Mandrill Mayhem at Chessington, what you think of it, if you agree with the points that I brought up. And of course, stay tuned for more coaster reviews here at Coaster Studios, and I'll see you next time.